Capitalism not only reproduces unevenness, but it becomes part of our consciousness. I'm going to take a dramatic example that I have used before, but it illustrates this point too. At the beginning of the 20th century, the city we know of as Detroit was a relatively small city located at the confluence of three rivers, which is where cities often develop all around the world, where traders and goods and services move. But it was transformed by capitalism. Capitalists decided, and for a variety of reasons, to build a particular industry that really took off, the automobile industry. Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, most of you know that story. And boom, from the 1930s up until the 1970s or 80s, this city went from a small, relatively sleepy river town to the great center of American capitalism. Many other parts of the United States fell into one or another kind of long-term depression, but Detroit boomed. Capitalism made development happen there, even as other parts of the United States were finding themselves shrinking. New England, for example, which was once the center of a thriving textile industry, saw all the textile plants shut down. To this day, you can travel in many parts of New England, seeing empty, long brick buildings where factories once hummed, where nothing happens now. Many of them have been sitting empty for decades. And so the capitalists built Detroit. Then in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, those capitalists, for the normal reasons of capitalism, looked to make profits and realized they could make more profits someplace else. So they moved auto production to other parts of the United States, to Mexico, to Canada, and more recently to China and so on. And what happened to Detroit? The flip side of uneven development. From being a boom lifted up from the 1930s to the 1980s, let's say, they became the story of disaster. Detroit's declining. The simple way to describe it, in 1970-75, we're talking about Detroit as a city of 2 million people. Today, Detroit has less than 700,000 people in its population. That's uneven development. Notice here, and this is a very key point, that capitalism, where it builds a part of the society or a part of the world up, seems necessarily to crush another part down. That's what I mean when I say it reproduces unevenness. It doesn't solve the problem of unevenness by giving us evenness, a balanced development. The best you can hope for is, if you're on the wrong end of imbalance, is that you get moved to the right end. But of course, you will have to notice, unless you're blind, that that's at the expense of some other place that went the other way. Imbalance is capitalism's normal way of functioning, and it always has been. Even today, if you look at the parts of the American economy, of American capitalism that are successful, Amazon, Google, the high-techs, they produce the Jeffrey Bezoses, one of those people with $100 billion of wealth. But there are vast parts of the United States that have no wealth at all, where people barely get by. Tens of millions of people like that for every one Jeffrey. That's uneven development within a capitalist framework. And the important thing is not to think that it's necessary. This is not about nature. This is not about automatic. This is not about neutral. This is a product of capitalism.